So healing the wound of judgment or guilt, the process I do on that is instead of always telling yourself where you're not good enough, you start to tell yourself where you're doing amazing. I do this every day. I have for a decade. Every day I write down 3 things I did well yesterday. Super simple. Every morning I grab a cup of coffee because coffee makes you happy. It does. I love coffee. I have a cup of coffee. The caffeine starts to pump all this positivity, this energy in you. And then I write down on a piece of paper 3 things I did well yesterday.
Mhm.
And you think, oh, I don't, that seems silly. It's not worth my time. It will change everything. All of a sudden, you start to notice everything you do well in the moment. You stop
Mhm.
fixating on where you're not enough and you start to say, holy cow, I'm amazing. And then you start to tell everyone around you they're amazing because you're noticing all the things they're doing well instead of all the things that they're doing to fall short of your impossible standards. And so with just these 2 little tips, we can heal the 2 most destructive of the bad moods that get in the way of our happiness.
Welcome to Biz Help for You, the show that saves you the expensive learning curve by providing advice from industry experts in every facet of the entrepreneurial journey. Too many small businesses collapse. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 20% fail within their first year, and less than 35% make it to their 10th anniversary. The goal of this podcast is to change that statistic. So if you're interested in learning more to be a successful entrepreneur, tune in today.
Let me tell you a little bit about my guest today. Matt O'Neill is a happiness expert known for his impactful work in promoting lasting happiness, reaching over 100,000 individuals globally. He hosts the Good Mood Revolution podcast and authored a book with the same title. With 2 decades of experience, Matt has personally coached hundreds on recognizing and overcoming the 8 primary bad moods that hinder joy. You can learn valuable techniques from Matt O'Neill on maintaining a positive mindset and overcoming emotional obstacles, crucial for resilience and sustained success in the business world. So Matt, welcome to the show.
What's up, Candy? So happy
I
to
am
be
looking
here.
forward to this conversation. This is going to
Me
be a fun
too.
one.
Yeah, absolutely. High five.
So before I get into questions on the topic, there we go. I would love for you just to tell your story of how did you become a happiness coach?
By being super unhappy is how I became a happiness coach.
So tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, the journey of entrepreneurship is a journey of ups and downs and challenges and crises, right? It seems like we're always in a crisis when we're an entrepreneur. Something's going on that could just take us out. Especially like the younger we are in our business, the more things can really hinge in the balance, and every single hire can be scary, or people will sabotage us. All these things just happen when you're in a W-9 and you get the steady paycheck. Less is riding on you, and things aren't as serious. And you leave work and you kind of leave it at work. But when you're an entrepreneur, your life kind of gets enmeshed in this. And so, my wife and I work together. We own a residential brokerage, a real estate brokerage, and we've got about 80 employees, and that's a lot of personalities to manage.
Yes.
And then I'm a partner in a different company, a property management company, and we have a title company. And there's just a lot of balls in the air all the time, and we have 4 kids. And life is just as stressful as I want to make it. So, from just being totally stressed out, burned out, and unhappy, and going to mastermind conferences with other really successful entrepreneurs who are burned out, stressed out, and unhappy, I decided I was chasing the wrong thing. All the money and the success and that was coming from my entrepreneur work was really not worth anything to me if we weren't super happy, super grateful, really joyful. So about a decade ago, I shifted all of my education and focus on how to sustain lasting happiness. And I really have geeked out on it so hard, studied with gurus and masters, like probably the biggest names in the world that are very recognizable, and then started to formulate my own ideas about it. I spent the last 4 years writing the book, The Good Mood Revolution, spent the last 2 years interviewing experts on happiness. And now I just teach people how to feel good as we're going after success.
hmm I think it's so important though too, because as entrepreneurs, I think sometimes we may go into this thinking, oh, it's going to be great. I'm going to have freedom and I'm just going to have, some financial, ability to make what I want. And, there's a lot of things that are put out there of what entrepreneurship really is, and they don't talk about the downsides. And so then when you're in the midst of it and you're worried about making payroll or, all these different things, it does add stress and can cause, that like depression almost sometimes. I've known people who just get to the point where they're like, I think I'm just going to be done and I just need to get out of it because it's just more than I expected. So do you have maybe some tips even on what entrepreneurs can do to have a realistic outlook on things, but even if things are going negatively that they didn't expect, like how you can still be happy even when things are not going the way you expect?
Yeah, happiness is a choice. And it's a choice that we make every single day and every single moment. We cannot, as much as we want to, we cannot control the external world. So as an entrepreneur, we're people who we want to take the bull by the horns and we're going to make it happen and it's going to happen the way we want it. We're really good at that. And even as good as we are at trying to control all the people and all the circumstances, we eventually learn we're not really in control of any of it. But we are in control of our own choice of internal perspective. And so it's a daily process to say, I'm going to choose to be joyful today, and I'm going to choose to process and understand any negative emotions that come my way today. And regardless of what's going on, if the business is losing money, I'm still going to be joyful because I have that choice to still be joyful. The only thing that's getting in the way of our joy are our own negative thoughts, not the external conditions. So there have been certainly times when we've been losing 100,000 a month, and I've been totally stressed out and thinking this sucks, and when's this going to end? And can I make it? And can I do it? And can I get payroll? And then there's been times when we've been losing 100,000 a month, and I felt really enthusiastic, optimistic, and excited about facing the challenges and doing it with a bunch of hope. Same situation, just different thought patterns and different emotional signatures. So we can navigate difficult times with happiness. It's just about our outlook.
Right. Well, and I think sometimes people might be saying, okay, well, this sounds great. You could just say, yes, let's just choose to be happy, but you don't know what it's really like in my situation too. So do you want to maybe even just give a practical tip of what they can do? So when they're in the midst of that, depression or whatever, and they're like, well, I want to feel happy, but I don't. Like, is there something you can share with them on how to change that mindset so that they, even in the midst of the struggle, can still find that joy?
Yep. There are 8 primary bad moods. And I write about these 8 primary bad moods in my book, The Good Mood Revolution. And it's what we talk about on the podcast, The Good Mood Revolution. They start with shame. And this is the wound of rejection, where all of us have been rejected at some point in our lives. Maybe it was our parents, maybe it was a teacher or a coach or other kids. And we internalize it to say something's wrong with me. And that wound of rejection really probably powers a lot of our desire to be successful. We want to prove how good we are in the world, in the external world, to say, you can't reject me. I'm doing so great. Look at all the things I'm doing. I give all this money to charity. I'm unrejectable. And yet it's still this primary bad mood of a wound of rejection where we're only doing things to not be rejected. Well, when we don't heal that wound, then we're vulnerable to constantly worrying about if we'll be rejected again, or if something goes wrong, to think that there's something wrong with us. So that's the first of the 8 bad moods, this wound of rejection. In my book, I give a real practical strategy that I'll give right here on the podcast. It's to search your mind for any difficult situations that you've been through when you were younger, like hard times, challenging times. Think of really harsh parental figures or coaches or teachers, other kids that may have mocked you. And then in that space where you're thinking about how hard it was to go through those times, write down in a list, what are the things I started to believe about myself? For me, I had a belief I was unlovable.
Mhm.
And I tried to fill the void to be lovable by proving I was with a bunch of external success. But the whole root of the problem was this root belief that I may not be lovable. It's not true. All of us are
Mhm.
lovable. So we got to
Mhm.
find this root belief that may be driving our external entrepreneur success. And so maybe that root belief was helpful. For me, it was. I started some businesses to prove how great I was. But then it's no longer serving us at some point once we're being successful in the world. And then it's saying the truth. And so the truth is, I'm lovable no matter what. I'm lovable
Mhm.
if my business is making money. I'm lovable if my business is not making money. I'm lovable all the time. And that now becomes an affirmation. The truth is way more powerful than the lie. So the
Mhm.
truth of you are lovable, if you repeat that to yourself enough times, maybe 30 days in a row, it just incinerates that lie. And then you no longer are trying to achieve based on telling yourself that you're not good enough. We may think, though, oh, I have to keep telling, this is a subconscious thought. I have to keep telling myself I'm not good enough so that I push myself to achieve more. I'm on the other side of this. So
Mhm.
I was definitely that way. I'll just continue to tell myself I'm not good enough, and that'll push me to do better. Once I told myself the truth, I was lovable no matter what. Our businesses became 10 times more successful.
Mhm.
So that thought, I need to tell myself I'm not good enough to push me to success, is an untrue thought. It's actually an anchor holding you back from how successful you could be. It's been holding you down, not pushing you forward.
Mhm. So really changing that mindset around through, like you're saying, maybe saying that affirmation every day will be something that will help you like overcome that challenge of, I'm not feeling so happy today. So we can actually change that. So
Yeah, the only
that's a
reason we're
great
not
tip.
happy today is one of these 8 bad moods. And so
Mhm.
the shame or rejection is the first. The next is guilt or judgment. So really critical people who are critical on others, or perfectionist. That means you're critical on yourself. Again, we think that that's a good thing, and it's one of the things that keeps us from being happy. We
Mhm.
cannot be perfect. Cannot.
Right.
And holding ourselves to a standard that's unattainable is an impossible standard to be happy with. Again, we may think that that's going to help us be successful, but I'd say if you're successful and you're not happy, that you're failing.
Mhm.
So healing the wound of judgment or guilt, the process I do on that is, instead of always telling yourself where you're not good enough, you start to tell yourself where you're doing amazing. I do this every
Mhm.
day. I have for a decade. Every day I write down 3 things I did well yesterday. Super simple. Every morning I grab a cup of coffee because coffee makes you happy. It does. I love coffee. I have a cup of coffee, the caffeine starts to pump all this positivity, this energy in you. And then I write down on a piece of paper 3 things I did well yesterday.
Mhm.
And you think, oh, I don't, that seems silly. It's not worth my time. It will change everything. All of a sudden, you start to notice everything you do well in the moment. You stop
Mhm.
fixating on where you're not enough, and you start to say, holy cow, I'm amazing. And then you start to tell everyone around you they're amazing because you're noticing all the things they're doing well instead of all the things that they're doing to
Mhm.
fall short of your impossible standards. And so, with just these 2 little tips, we can heal the 2 most destructive of the bad moods that get in the way of our happiness.
Mhm. And I assume that, if they are listening to your podcast, obviously get the book, they'll be able to learn all 8 of those negative ones that
Oh,
you're
we could
talking
we could go
about.
through them now. I
Okay,
don't keep
sure.
anything behind a paywall. Like, there's no, for me,
Perfect.
I just want to brighten people's lives, right? Like, I
That
just
would be
want
great.
everyone to
Let's
be
hear them.
happy.
Yeah, let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, the next one is the wound of overwhelm.
Mhm.
And this for me is a close one. We so my dad abandoned our family when I was 5, and my mom was a secretary. She was making 24,000 a year with 4 kids.
Mm.
No financial help from my dad, and it was just tough. I my older brother and sister were away at college, and so I became the man of the house at age 5. tremendous amount of responsibility that I put on my own shoulders to be the man of the house. A lot of entrepreneurs have similar stories where they had to be very responsible from a very young age. Well, what happens when we get older, because when we're a kid, there's no space for us to say, I can't take it on, because it's survival. It's like, I have to take on this role to survive. Well, when we become an adult, we then get negative tendencies to take on everything ourselves and not ask for help, and to get completely overwhelmed. And that wound of overwhelm, another way to put it is hopelessness, is that there's just so much and I can't keep up with all of it. That belief is a lie. There's not so much, you can't keep up with it. And you're not the only one that is doing everything. You rely on so many different people all the time. All the forces of the universe, of God, of all these other people are lifting you up and supporting you every single day as soon as you notice it. You notice it's not all up to you. So we want to heal that wound of overwhelm. And I know I'd listened to one of your other episodes where an expert was on talking about overwhelm, and I really enjoyed the episode.
Thank you.
The overwhelm is never a truth. It's, again, just a story we're telling ourselves that there's too much to do. It's all up to me and I have to do it all. It's not a truth. Your guest had recommended what I recommend, which is make a list of the things you need to do. Now, of that list, what's the one thing that would make today a win? If you could only get one of the things on that list done, what is the one thing that you could say, if I only did one thing today, today would be a total win for me? And you do that one thing. Chances are your list is 20 items long if you're an entrepreneur.
Or more. Right.
And you may say, when you're feeling lost in the emotion of overwhelm, you don't understand. I've got my daughter has tennis practice tonight, and my son has baseball practice, and also my marriage is falling apart. And at the same time, this employee is sabotaging me, and we're losing money, and all, right? That's the overwhelm. Again, we make a list. Okay, so we've got tennis practice, we've got baseball practice, we've got nourish our marriage, we've got fortify our company against the employee. Okay, there's 4 things we need to do today. What's the number one thing on that list that's going to make the biggest impact and make today a win? Well, probably of that list, this fictitious list, is nourish my marriage.
I agree.
So what could I do today to nourish my marriage? One thing I could do is I could call a counselor. Maybe that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to find a counselor. I know marriage counseling is very successful. I have many friends who've done it and had great success with it. I'm going to find a marriage counselor. If I just do that one thing today, today's a success. Okay, well, I found a marriage counselor. It's only taken me an hour. I still have 7 hours of work today. If I could do a second thing today, what would it be? Well, how about let's fortify our company against that person that's sabotaging us? Okay, how do I do that? Well, we're going to take an inventory of every place we're vulnerable. And then we'll shore up those places where we're vulnerable. Man, I did 2 things today, and then I took my kids to practice, and it was like the most successful day. I don't have to be overwhelmed. It's just when we don't have a list and we're not making priorities about what actually is the most important thing, it all feels like it's important, and we get totally lost in it.
Yep. So true. I think too, a lot of times we're putting maybe deadlines on things so that we're feeling we have to accomplish everything today, when maybe not everything has a deadline of today as well. So I think just figuring that out, like you're saying, prioritizing something and figuring out what's that one major thing I have to do. And then if I have the next, that I can get to, great. Right. But then if we're putting all of these deadlines on ourselves that aren't even real, I think that probably adds to it.
And Candy, this again, why would we put so much pressure on ourselves to get everything done sooner than later? It goes back to the first 2 wounds we've probably hopefully healed, that I'm a perfectionist and an overachiever because I'm trying to fill a void that success can't fill. So once we start to know we're enough no matter what we achieve, which is the first wound, that wound of rejection. And then once we stop being such a perfectionist and start noticing that we're actually doing great every single day, we don't have these unrealistic expectations of ourselves anymore that I have to do 10 things today.
Yeah. So what is the 4th negative mood that we have.
The next one is the wound of loss, sadness. Things are changing and they're not as good. In my real estate business this week, a big change happened. National Association of Realtors was sued in a class action lawsuit. It completely changed the way we conduct business. It just happened Monday. Like a $450 million lawsuit, billions of dollars of lawsuit money. And my first reaction was loss. Well, things aren't as good now. This change has totally changed the way we're doing things, and it's not going to be as good. And I spiraled into this wound that it was good before and it won't be good now. It's not a truth, but it's the way that we think when things change. And it's because when we were young, some bad things would happen, and then we would think things weren't as good. And so we have this, we then, our young brain said, okay, change is bad, so I don't want things to change. But the truth is that in every difficulty is the seed of opportunity. And the future is only as bright as we choose to make it. So we want to recognize when we're fearing change, and we want to recognize when we're thinking that things used to be better than they are going to be in the future, and just stop that thought process in its tracks. And we move into now projecting a really positive future, and we do that with goal setting. And all entrepreneurs are really good goal setters, so this isn't anything new. But when you are starting to be thinking that, oh, this change is going to be bad for me, it doesn't have to be. It will be if you think it will be, for sure. Like in my real estate business, when I was thinking it was going to be bad for us, it was going to be bad for us. And I actually had 5 different people leave my company when my mindset was, this is going to be bad. And it was interesting. It was bad. My mindset was, this is going to be bad. And guess what was happening? Things were being bad. So I stayed in that mindset for a month, that this is going to be bad. And then on a phone call with one person in my company, our broker, she said, what if this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to us? And I was like, tell me more. And she said, what if this is so challenging that people who are not as equipped as us, who are not as smart as us, who haven't been doing this as long as us, who don't have the fortitude and resilience that we have, that they get out of the business, and that the people who have what we have rise to the top at an even higher level. And I was like, I said, Lisa, I freaking love that. let's use that thought process instead of the other one. Well, as soon as we did, like literally a moment on a phone call, the energy around everything changed. Optimism about the future started to show up. All these ideas started to come to us. People started to come to us. We started to attract other employees, and the whole world turned into a positive one for us. And then now everything was bright and the future was bright. So that wound of loss, or that decision that things will be worse in the future than they were in the past, is a poor decision.
So do you want to cover all 8 today too, or do you want to leave a little bit of a, desire for people to to follow up and get your book?
Candy, I know that your episodes typically don't run as long as it would take to get through all 8. So we can do one more if you'd like. I'll give you the last 4. The last 4, we have the wound of inadequacy, where we feel like we're not enough, or we don't have enough. And then the next is the wound of violation, where we get really angry at people violating us. And then the final one is the wound of insecurity, or the feeling that we need to be better or superior to people.
Okay, so if we have these like negative feelings, obviously sometimes we can just turn it around on our own too. We could just, have that positive mindset. But, there are some situations that can feel difficult, that it's hard to like handle on their own too. So do you have some recommendations on, what they can do, take some steps, whether, you mentioned counseling, a marriage counselor or something too, like maybe some steps to reach out and get support that they need to help them personally, as well as, they're running a company, and most of them probably have other people depending on them as well too. So we can't let, this affect our business, because we have employees or other people who are dependent on this success, so they get their paycheck. So any tips you have that, if you're struggling and you're not able to do this on your own, what can they be doing to get out of that negative space in their head?
Yeah, I wish that this was taught all the time, right? It's not, though. And, a bunch of statistics say that 80% of us are in a negative headspace on a daily basis. 8 out of 10 of us. And then we fluctuate into 20% of the time we're feeling in a really positive, powerful space, but 80% of the time we're just not. And it doesn't have to be that way. It can be flip-flopped, where 80% of the time we're feeling amazing and only 20% of the time we're suffering. And it can get even lower than that. Like, we could be in a positive headspace 95% of the time, and then only deal with some upsets maybe 1 out of 20 days. And then we can continue to shorten it. Your podcast is a light. It's a beacon of light. Listening to you, and I've listened to your episodes, you're bringing on great guests that are teaching people how to, navigate the business challenges. That's one of the ways that we keep our head up, is we hang around other positive people. My podcast, Good Mood Revolution, same thing. My book has got tips on, the second half of the book is tips on how to stay in positive moods for longer amounts of time. So you can go on Amazon and get that book. And I have just a small handful, just a very small number of personal clients that I will coach. So if somebody is truly struggling and just needs maybe guidance just for a little bit of time, I can talk with them and show them where the thinking is probably just not logical for their own success. And they could reach out to me at mattoneil.com.
Okay, perfect. I do think that there are so many things that we can do, but sometimes people feel there's a stigma, right? If I'm reaching out to somebody for support, counseling, whatever that might be, like, oh, I'm going to be looked down upon, which probably comes back to those negative, emotions again that you were talking about, being judged or anything like that too. So, do you have anything that you could tell the person who's listening to, who might think there's a stigma, about reaching out and getting help? That it's okay to actually talk about this with someone and get that support that you need.
Yeah, Simone Biles. Did you see the Olympics?
Good example. I love, I think it's great because she was criticized a lot, for
so
Tokyo, and now she's
hard.
going back to Paris, and, she performed, pretty well. Someone might say, oh, well, she didn't do perfect. She didn't do,
Oh,
but
she did, though. She did.
Yeah, overcame those challenges.
She and I watched part of the documentary about Simone Biles. I was one of the people that judged her when she pulled out of the Olympics in 4 years ago. And I thought, my daughter's a gymnast, and we were so looking forward to seeing Simone compete. And when she just said, oh, I'm not going to, and I'm thinking, an athlete should go out there and, yeah, you might get hurt, but just compete. Right. And so so I was one of the people that judged her. And yet it was probably the bravest thing she could have done to say, I need help and I can't perform today. And watching that documentary completely changed my thoughts. And I saw just how beautiful it was that she was saying, I'm not going to compete, and my mental health is more important right now, and my actual health is more important than performance. What a beautiful story for all of us. And the world is coming more and more that way. But if you think about it, you've always had coaches. When you were in second grade, you had a second grade teacher that was helping you. When you were in college, you had college professors that were helping you. When you were being raised, your parents were helping you. So we've always had coaches. And we've always had people helping us at all times. And then all of a sudden we graduate college and now we don't need someone helping us or guiding us. That doesn't make sense. Right. So there shouldn't be any stigma about getting coaching and assistance and help, because we've had it our whole life. Why should it stop?
Well, I even think the Simone Biles example brought about a conversation, right? That was a platform she had, allowed other people to start talking about that, right? Whether you're an elite Olympian and you're struggling, or you're an everyday person like me, right? That we all have things that we go through periodically, and it can be challenging. And to be able to say, like, I do know that I need to, think about my own health and well-being too. And I can't just keep going on and on, and
And
moving
then and
forward
then look
without,
and
you
look what
know,
happened with her.
support. Hmm.
When her mental health was not there, she couldn't even perform.
Hmm.
And then once she worked on her mental health, she won gold medal and best all-around gymnast in the world by not just a small
Right.
amount, by a large amount.
Hmm.
And so if you're struggling with something that's keeping you from being your happiest, but you think you're performing well, imagine how well you'll perform when you feel freaking amazing.
Right.
And the best in
Exactly.
the world always have mental coaches. They do. All
Hmm.
the top performing athletes in the world have got coaches that help them with their mindset. And so why shouldn't it be for the top entrepreneurs? It has been for
Right.
me. I've always had mindset coaches.
Hmm. Well, it's a great, concept too, to realize like everyone can have the support that they need, and you don't have to look at it as a negative, like, oh, I'm not good enough on my own, that I have to reach out. So I appreciate, you're even sharing that, because it's a great example that, yes, we don't have to, be an island unto ourselves and not share what we're going through. And I love that too. I've done in business too, mastermind groups too, where we can go and we can share, business challenges or whatever. But sometimes it gets to the personal things too. Like, I'm really struggling with this, because in life, sometimes a lot of things happen in one time, right? And it doesn't seem like everything's just kind of spaced out. There's times where we have a lot of challenges come at one time, and just being able to have someone that is an entrepreneur too, who understands what it's like to have to run a business in the midst of everything else, because friends and family maybe don't always understand as an entrepreneur what we go through. But having a support system, whether it's your spouse, your parents, friends, family, other business owners who really get it, I think it's fine to be able to share what we're going
It's
through and
it's
get that
tough to
support
share with our spouse though,
sometimes.
because because then we don't, like, for me, if something's challenging me and then I share with Katie,
Hmm.
she'll start to worry about it.
Right.
And now two
Especially
of
because you're in
us
business together. So
and
it's not
now
just
two
husband and
yeah,
wife.
but now two of us are
Hmm.
struggling with this thing. And so I don't always want to bring her down
Right.
with what's challenging me. So it's good to have a mastermind group. I love mastermind groups. And typically
Hmm.
in mastermind groups, we end up talking about personal challenges just as much as business
Hmm.
challenges, because how you do one thing is how you do everything. And yeah, I mean, we have aging parents and we have loss in our lives, and we have relationships that are hard to manage, and children relationships that are difficult to manage sometimes. And sometimes we need help with that just as much as we need help with the business.
Right. Well, I know we're coming to the end of the time that we have together. I know you had mentioned, you have an offer and that listeners can reach out to you. I'd love for you just to share that again, of how they can find you and what you're offering them.
Yeah, there's I mean, the best place to plug in is the Good Mood Revolution podcast, and getting that book on Amazon, Good Mood Revolution. But we've got a Good Mood Superpowers quiz at matto'neill.com. If you're just curious about what your most positive attributes are on good moods, so that you can lean into that more, you can go take that quiz for free at matto'neill.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Matt, for being a guest on my show and, talking on this topic. I really appreciate the time you took out of your day, to have this discussion with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I just love your show.
Thank you. And to the listener, if you enjoyed today's topic and you want to hear additional information, you can find access to exclusive content in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in today. Would you please share this episode with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? And if you find our show informative, would you consider being a financial sponsor to help me continue my mission to educate business owners? A link is located in the episode description, and no amount is too small. I'd really appreciate your support. If you are interested in connecting with our guest and receiving the offer they had to share, a link to our resource page is in the show notes. Finally, if you have any bookkeeping or payroll needs, reach out to us at 310 534-5577 or contact@abandp.com. My team and I are eager to assist you. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.